Our job is to bring together the food and beverage industry of Chicagoland to leverage this incredible industry to do great things, like grow the industry, grow the local economy, create jobs. And those are important every single day, but even more important in the midst of the current global pandemic and sort of, I'll say, everything happening in Chicago right now. Growth and keeping things moving is incredibly important now and for the foreseeable future. We also have launched a new nonprofit called Bigger Table. Bigger Table is dedicated to really giving back to the incredible communities we have across Chicagoland. It brings the food and beverage industry together to really deal with some incredibly challenging issues in our local communities: food insecurity, unemployment, inclusive economic development, and a bunch of other things. We have an incredible project going on right now where we have, I think it is 8 companies who are all donating ingredients that will help us make 250,000 servings of food that will be donated to area food banks to help deal with the food insecurity that's a growing issue in the midst of the COVID crisis. So more to come on that. We have 3 fantastic panelists today. You can see their smiling faces and names in stereo, both on the Zoom as well as on the screen. I'm going to ask that each of them go and introduce themselves, because they'll do a way better job than I will, and just let you know sort of who they are, where they're coming from, the perspective they bring to us today. Let's start with Lisa Johnson.
Morning. Thanks for asking me to participate, and thanks to all of our participants for joining us today. I am a principal with Kincannon and Reed. We're a global executive search firm specializing in agribusiness and food. So my perspective on this is sort of what's going on out there in the market. I've been in food my entire career, mostly in the prepared food and foods industry where I started. That's a bit about me.
Terrific. Joe, how about you?
Yeah, sure. My career breaks down into really 3 parts. I was a military officer many years ago in the Navy for about 10 years. So that's how I got started. But I spent most of my career in marketing and insights with various packaged goods companies, mostly in food and bev, but some beauty care as well. And then for the last year, a little more than a year and a half now almost, I've been on my own consulting, and I spent a lot of my time working as president of Base 3 Group, which is a digital marketing agency. So that's me. Good to be here this morning.
Terrific. Glad to have you. And last but not least, the lovely and talented Charley Orwig.
Lovely and talented. That's a hell of an introduction. Thanks,
well,
Alan.
okay, so talented.
Yeah, thank you for having me as well. And thanks, Joe and Lisa, for participating also. I've been in the food and beverage industry since the late 90s. I think I have now worked in every single channel within food and bev, almost all of those roles in some sort of hiring capacity. So I think my role here today is going to be as the guy who's had maybe the most jobs and has had to maybe be the most adaptable. We'll see how that goes.
Wow, there could be a real contest for for that title. Just, but I like that you put it out there and that you're bold about it. So thanks for that, Charley. Let's start with sort of what's on really got to be everybody's mind in terms of their career right now. Like, where are there opportunities and challenges as each of you see them from your purview, really across, especially the food and beverage industry, but even we can even open it up to even outside that. Charley, let's start with you.
Yeah, so obviously the food and beverage industry is split really in half right now. And most of the opportunities are on the retail or grocery side of things, which has really exploded. I just saw a stat yesterday that food in-home or the grocery channel has taken upwards of 12 points of share of the consumer's food dollar back just from chain restaurants. So as you think about where opportunities lie, if it's with a manufacturer or on the retail side, anyone who has a predominant amount of business in that channel, they are the ones that seem to be doing the most hiring and whose business is the most vibrant. Obviously, food service and the restaurant business is much, much more challenging, especially in hospitality.
Got it. Lisa, what are you seeing?
Well, right now where we are sort of in the economy, it's the worst it's been since 2008. So millions of jobs have been lost, but at the same time, millions of jobs. Right now there's millions of people without jobs, but soon there's going to be millions of jobs without people. And so that's something to keep in mind. Those jobs are going to be needing to be filled. And I agree with Charlie, retail right now is where the jobs are, but food service will come back. The question is how fast. And I'm already talking to people that the restaurants just opened in Chicago yesterday. And people are already making plans, calling people up and making plans to go out with 1 or 2 people, start social distancing and start visiting those restaurants. So food service is going to have a lot to do to come back, but it will come back.
Terrific. Joe, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think my viewpoint is as an agency type person these days with many, many different clients across many different types of businesses. I see some of what Charlie and Lisa are saying for sure. I also see some of our kind of touch clients, if you will, and they need to have a face-to-face. They've really stopped a lot of things, but also the touchless clients have accelerated. So digital has a transition we were making before, and digital business is a transition we were making before. It just got a swift kick in the behind for sure, and that's accelerated in many ways. So I kind of see some things, and I think we're all learning as we're all figuring this out a little bit as we go, right? But I've seen some things really be impacted, and other things, candidly, money move in marketing and accelerate, and the need for different skill sets beginning to happen in other places. So, and I also see what Lisa mentioned is that my personal experience is, wow, they opened the restaurants and they were full. I mean, like the outside areas were packed, and so I recognize the difficulty of unemployment. I'd like to believe it's going to come back quick as well. Jobs will need to be filled. I also see pent-up interest in small business and supporting the local communities as well, which is heartwarming, candidly, to see that, right? So
Couldn't agree more. We had a webinar a little earlier this week talking about how Chicago's opening up with some representatives from the mayor's office and World Business Chicago. And probably the thing that struck me most was they were saying, yeah, there's some winners and losers in the food and beverage industry right now, but there's winners. And there's some parts of the economy where there are very few winners and have been entirely shut down. Food has continued to be strong, and again, I think that pent-up demand for restaurants is still there. People are still interested in doing those things, which is all good and positive. There's some bright spots, and I'll say food is probably one of those that continues to be steady, right? It's like everybody's still going to eat, still needs to eat. They may be doing that a little bit different way, but there are some bright spots, and that's a terrific thing about food and beverage. Charlie, are there other sort of bright spots that you're seeing, or other things you think are worth being optimistic about?
Oh, absolutely. To piggyback on what Joe and Lisa were saying, just yesterday here in the Schaumburg area, I tried to go out to lunch, and the drive-through lines were massive. I mean, 20, 30 cars in a drive-through for one of our customers right outside my window here. So there are certainly bright spots. Joe, you'd mentioned digital. If you're a restaurant chain that is strong in digital and drive-through, you've got a good track record and reputation. I mean, those chains are doing really well and definitely hiring now. Not at the executive level necessarily, but as many of the folks who might be attending here would be looking at. But there are a lot of bright spots, and all the suppliers that supply those organizations are doing well too.
Terrific. Is there anywhere hiring is getting accelerated? where things are actually far better. Again, I don't know how is supply chain, Charley, or how are some of the other segments where there's aggressive pursuit of talented folks?
Well, I think that's a little bit in a pause. So I think what we're going to see is there's, as Lisa mentioned, there's definitely going to be a need for people. Right now, there's a need for people at the restaurant and sort of driver level and in distribution. And that it's an accelerated need now because so many people who are on the accelerated unemployment plan, I've seen a number of statistics about those folks wanting to stay out until that's over, until the national support is over at the end of July. So there are a lot of opportunities at that level.
What about, again, either specific positions or skill sets that you're seeing, Joe or Lisa?
Well, if I can say, executive recruiting is still going on. I do searches for executives, and it hasn't accelerated, but it hasn't slowed down all that much either. I'm recruiting SVPs and C-suites, and that's a lot of that succession planning that hasn't slowed down. And then it's also some smaller or mid-level companies that are, they're business people. They're taking advantage of the economy. So right now it's you can go out and maybe recruit somebody that maybe you couldn't afford before. And so some of that recruiting is going with job changings and things like that. And people are looking for people that are adaptable. So it's almost like a pause, I would say. It's slowed down a bit, but it's not dead by any means. And this is going to be a blip. I mean, that's what I think people that are older, they've seen this before. It's had different names and it's come about in different ways, but we've seen the economy slow down and pause and rebound before. And I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. Supply chain, I think, is, especially if it's focused on retail and even in the agribusiness, people are moving forward because those businesses are growing. We're not really sure where imports and exports are going to go. So shopping local now, people are looking for people that haven't necessarily had to deal with supply chain as much in the past because their local was very local. They're expanding those borders now and they're looking for supply chain people that understand that distribution piece. So, I mean, there are opportunities. You just have to look for them.
Yeah. I think Alan, I think in marketing, which is that's sort of my worldview in this conversation, I think, and this was happening before, so I feel like I'm telling people things they already know, but digital, e-commerce, all of that was happening, and the demand there continues to be as strong as it ever was. And I think businesses are realizing that I need to move more of my portfolio and what I sell to that sort of an environment to protect myself potentially from future things like this that might occur, as opposed to being more reliant on brick and mortar or whatever. Now, I think brick and mortar is coming back? Do I think traditional marketing is coming back? Yeah, but the skill set a marketer has is in motion right now. The skills that we all grew up with, certainly that I grew up with, haven't been doing this such a long time, right? Those skills, they're still needed, they're still out there, but the demand for the new skills is really, really important. And I think our ability to pivot as marketers around that is going to be critical. And to candidly, for the last couple of years, I've been learning new things. And I think that's the way it's going to feel for people in our industry is you're going to feel like, oh, I got to learn new things to be successful in today's environment than perhaps I needed to do 5 or 10 years ago. So for sure, I see movement in that way in marketing.
Terrific, great stuff. So let's dig in on that a little bit. So let's look a few months down the line, maybe a year or more down the line. What do we think has fundamentally changed that'll change, again, what employers are looking for? You're talking about learning new skills. Which ones are the ones that we think are like, maybe are now not going to be so in demand? Like, knowing how to buy television advertising may not be the, right? I was wondering about the people who distribute samples inside of a Costco, right? Um,
They're starting that back up.
are going to be right. What are the things we think that are going to be have changed forever, and what things do we think are going to continue to grow? So let's dig down on what more of those skills are, and maybe some that have gone away. Charley, let's start with you.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in there. I would think of it more, or I'm thinking of it less about a specific skill and more about a quality. And I think Joe hit it right on the head, which is people are now looking for making hires that are adaptable, continuous, lifelong learners who are curious and able to pick up new skills as they become necessary. So I might not know exactly what skill set I need in 3 to 6 months. So, but if I have an open position, I'm going to be hiring for the person who appears to be the most adaptable and the most interested in picking up a new skill or proactively going after that type of self-improvement.
Yeah, I would echo, Alan. I would echo that. I think the above the line skills, so like your professional skills, I think a lot of us understand what those are. If you don't know how to use digital media and you don't know how to get into Google Analytics and all that, you better start learning, because all that's true. If you don't understand e-commerce and how all of that's true. So all those things are there, but they're going to accelerate, I think, for sure. But below the line, I think, is where the biggest change is, which is just how our ways of working, how we operate interpersonally, being able to work remotely from home. I think is for sure. It seems such a simple one, but yeah, I was telling you guys before, like introverts are taking over the world now, right? because our ability to deal with this is different maybe than certainly some of the extrovert friends I know, right? So I think that's true. I think also just the adaptability, the changeability. And I've always been one of those people that like, don't wait for the change to happen to you or whatever. Go seek out the change and make it happen, like go find it, go find where it needs to happen and make it happen. Because if you're sitting there waiting for it, like this is a big one for me, if you're sitting there waiting for it, it's going to plow you over. But if you go seek out what's moving, like probably some of the listeners today, right, then you're going to be better equipped to deal with that change and better ready to adapt to it as well. And I've always thought just holistic thinking is really, really important. Whole brain thinking is really, really important as well. So being able to be intuitive and logical at the same time is certainly important. And I think that's even more important today. So.
Love it.
I echo that too. Adaptability, I think, is the #1 skill that people are looking for, and people that can size up risk and take those risks. I mean, just think of how much our world has changed in the past 3 months. If you wanted to take a global office remote and make that office work remotely, that would have taken years of planning. It was accomplished in days. So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about with adaptability and being able to move quickly and adjust and pivot. That's what companies are looking for. They're assessing their pools, and they're looking for people that are adaptable like that, because that's just going to become part of our everyday life now, is being able to pivot like that.
Terrific. So a question came through, like, where can you go to pick up some of these skills? Where are the resources where you can start to learn some of that? And maybe the resources are coming organically through what we're living through right now, or are there some specific places you could go? Anyone with thoughts on that?
I mean, a plug for one of my side hustles would be, online graduate programs right now are experiencing a real resurgence. So if you have the opportunity to come back and take an online class, whether it's as part of a certificate program, part of a graduate program, whatever it is, they're seeing a real resurgence right now. And so Lake Forest Graduate School Management, a small plug there. But is a great opportunity. And there are a number of online programs that are offering certification classes that are easy to pick up. One of my goals over this period of time is to take the happiness class from Yale. I've been dying to do that. Now that it's online for free, I feel like that's one I've got to take. Please feel free to insert your punchline now.
I don't know. I mean, Alan, I've been filling some of my free time with, and I won't plug it, but you know, I'm taking an online course that teaches me how to do things with LinkedIn. It teaches me how to do things with Twitter. It teaches me all the back end stuff associated with a lot of the digital media. And this is an area I work in, but you know, the extra time has allowed me actually. It's like this course has like 300 hours of material, right? So it's really extensive. And I've made it through about half, just for the record, in this amount of time. But I've been spending my extra time doing that and learning. And I think there's a lot available online if you go look for it, for sure.
Right. This is a great time because people do have more time now. If nothing else, they're not commuting as much. You've got some people have an extra 2-3 hours a day just not commuting. And this is a great time to kind of take a step back and assess your career, where you are today and where you want it to go in the future. And I think a big part of moving your career forward a lot of times is networking. And even though we have to social distance, and some of that's going to continue and we can't go out and meet everybody, you can do it online. You can make phone calls. And I think opting into your network and just picking people's brains, you know, online learning is, I think, optimal, but also just, you know, tap into your network and ask people for advice. Yeah. Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network, to put in a plug as well, you know, it's a great location to meet people with similar interests to you, and they're in all different types of businesses and all different stages of their career. You know, talk to them.
Lisa, I'm glad you said that, and you reminded me, because I feel very similarly. Networking has changed, hasn't it? Right? And I think, I mean, I talked to someone before all this happened, and he would do like 4 or 5 calls a week, and that sort of inspired me to start rolling through my LinkedIn contacts and other contacts and set up. Every week I set up at least 2 or 3 30-minute calls with somebody, and there might be some people on here that I've talked to, I don't know, but it's been really important to me just to stay connected in that way, and just to hear how everybody's doing. And candidly, some people just, right, you're just catching up with people maybe you haven't had a chance to spend 30 minutes talking one-on-one with for a long time. So that's been important for my mental health along the way too. So.
Absolutely. And this is a great time to start networking, because I mean, a lot of people don't understand networking means giving, not just taking, and you've got the time to give now.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. You know, one of the things that one of the questions I just saw coming up in the chat around Zoom interviews, as companies continue to lean into hiring in this media, in this forum, it becomes even more important that you have advocacy from the hiring side. So, you know, as I think about, you know, going out and looking for a new marketer, am I going to trust an interview this way, the same way I would have trusted an in-person one? Maybe eventually, but right now I'm really going to be looking for a referral. I'm going to be looking for somebody who has been introduced to me by someone else and didn't necessarily come in through a job board. And, you know, that just speaks to the importance to growing your network, making sure you're helping people as often as you can, and being connected that way.
I'd also like to just point out, with so many trade shows being canceled and so many sort of larger events where people have been meeting others, I've had a couple of major retail buyers say to me, I took the time that I would have spent on that, and I take 10 calls a week for 30 minutes from the people who I would have met at a trade show. So some are being very deliberate about sort of reaching out and making sure that because they do have the time, all that time that would have been at the trade show, traveling to and from the trade show, they recognize they now need to invest that in doing some kind of networking. And again, many are being very deliberate and have a more open door than they've ever had before, because that's the only way they're going to find the new product, meet the new person, make the new contact. So we certainly want to help facilitate that as well. Wow, terrific questions coming through. I'm going to keep going through sort of our list of questions, but please keep engaging in the chat. It's terrific, or feel free to send questions through. How do we feel this will affect sort of work-life balance longer term? Lisa, have we turned a corner?
I hope so. I mean, work-life balance is something, you know, I struggled with a lot earlier in my career than I do now. But I think that this is going to help people. I mean, I've worked from home for probably about 10 years. So working from home is nothing new for me. I work from home if I'm not on the road. So that I enjoy, but I think people, this is, again, people are assessing. Some people are deciding to retire earlier. Their new work from home, or their new home life balance is, homework balance is retiring. Other people are seizing the opportunity to work from home. It's definitely saves with childcare. It changes the childcare. So I think this is gonna have a lot of changes in the next couple of years on working remotely, working from home. I think those are going to become more something that we can do that in the past was frowned upon. Now that there have been so many executives working from home for months and they see what they can accomplish without driving into the office, that definitely there'll be people working from home a few times a month, if not on a regular basis. I think that's going to change work-life balance. Just getting that commute time back can add, like I said, 10 hours a week to your life.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think, like, I'm just thinking back when I was last in an office and worked from an office. Certainly we had work from home as part of what we could do. And I tried to work from home once a week when I was in the office to set an example for my folks. And I remember also too, and some of this has changed, that's why I'm saying it, but like, I remember also, like, I want you to come in fresh and excited the next day. So if you're here from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I find it hard to believe you're going to come in fresh and excited the next day. Now, a lot of that, so we'd always try to work on time, but I've been working from home, like Lisa said, for quite a while too, a year and a half now. It took some adjusting for sure. I definitely separate. I do work from home. I mean, I do work-life balance at home, which is, I commandeered about 150 or 200 square feet of my basement where I'm sitting right now, and that is my office. And when I'm in this little area, I'm working, and my family knows I'm working. And when I'm not in this area, I'm at home, and that kind of goes back and forth a lot more than it used to, and it's different times of day than 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever that was before. In fact, I love getting up early, 6 to noon, 6 to 2. I'm on my game, and then after that, it's working out, doing some chores, whatever that is. So I think work-life balance is changing, and I think I certainly feel like I had to go through an adjustment to make it the way it is, but there's things you can do to make it work for each of you in the way that works best. So.
Perfect. Charley, how about you?
Yeah, I would share an example from one of our distributor partners. And I think it's safe to say that food service distribution probably has a reputation for not being the most sort of progressive, fair way maybe to put that. And one of our distributor partners who had been very much you are in the office, this is how we work, this is what our business culture is. They're fairly meticulous about the metrics they track around productivity, around worker productivity. And last week, they shared with us that every measure for productivity they have is up, and all of their all their executive staff, all of their non-warehouse workers are working from home. And they said it's caused them to completely rethink that, let's call it an old-fashioned culture. And I think that type of productivity, and they are also not reporting that those who are working from home feel like they're overworked or that they are killing themselves, or whatever the expression might be. So it feels like they've also very quickly adjusted to that level of work-life balance while maintaining productivity.
Terrific. Well, all of you have had long careers and have some broad perspective. What are the things from other times in your career that you're able to apply now, or you think, I'll say, advice that hard fought and learned previously that you can impart today?
I'll go ahead and grab that one. Before I was an executive recruiter, I was actually I was a CEO of a small business for 20 years. I founded a company, grew it and sold it. So one of the most important thing to me that was I was calm and flexible, which I think are very important skills for any employee or employer, just be calm and flexible. And I also always look for diversity when we were hiring. And I think it's really important to be open to new ideas. And when I say diversity, I was talking, we look for different genders, we look for different age groups, we looked for different education levels. We just really wanted people that were different from ourselves because those people brought fresh perspectives. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that don't think the way you think and to listen to them so you can learn. And listening skills, I think, are really, really important.
Terrific, thank you. Charlie, how about you?
Well said, Lisa. This is a little contradictory to most of the business advice you'll hear, especially around productivity. But the thing that's worked best for me throughout the last 20, 25 years is I say yes to almost everything. All of the good things that have ever happened to me, personally or professionally, is because I said yes to something either didn't look like something I should have said yes to on the surface, it was something that scared me, or it was something that somebody told me I might not be good at or couldn't do, what have you. And so saying yes to things and leaning into areas that make you nervous, that's where I found, all of the growth that I've had professionally, and it's led, kind of in a stair step. I said yes to an assignment 20 years ago that scared me to death, and it turned out to be sort of the veer in my career path that's brought me here today. So,
yeah, for me, at risk of being a little bit repetitive, I suppose, for Lisa and Charlie, I'll say there's really, we've talked about adaptability and change. I think that's one for sure, but there's a couple other things I would say, which is one is just humility. You just don't know it all. At least a little bit like what you're saying, knowing what you know and what you're good at versus what somebody else is really, really important. And I think stepping forward yourself when you know that's something you can contribute to is important, but also allowing others to leverage their skills when you know you're not as good at that as they are is important. So humility is one for sure. And I think the other one's a little bit, Charlie, what you're saying, which is just keep that learning curve kind of steep. If it's too steep, you can get overwhelmed. If it's not steep enough, you're not engaged, And so I think it's a little bit the yes point, but I think just keeping that learning curve at that place that's optimal for you, like there's enough new stuff to engage you, but not too much new stuff that you're overwhelmed by everything. And that's something you work with your manager and your leaders to accomplish. But I've always felt like, and it feels scary, right? When you're, like you said, Charlie, it feels scary when you're learning new stuff, but it's critical to keep that learning curve slope steeper potentially than you even think it should be. So
I'd also just add, and don't give up. The opportunities are there. It's easy to get frustrated. I think it'll be particularly difficult to get to stay motivated and optimistic in these times. But you set your goal and you take steps every day towards reaching that goal.
Let me add one thing to that, Alan, which is just like hope is a really important concept. It seems almost a silly word for me to say right now, I recognize, but like it felt pretty hopeless there for a while, didn't it? And so, and I think hope's really important. And hope for a bright future, hope for change, hope for a lot of things. It's coming, guys. You can already see it, right? And I think having that that positivity that the word hope brings is really, really important. We all need that right now, right? So
couldn't agree more. So what would you suggest for somebody whose, I'll say, job may not have great prospects for the immediate future? We can think. So like I have a friend who works for Ticketmaster, and it's pretty clear he needs to consider a career change. unless something changes pretty quickly. So what kinds of advice would you give either that friend or someone who again, the prospects of where they've sort of created their expertise may have gone away or may not look good for the next few years? How might you go about that? Anyone?
I think it's important to be patient and be persistent. This is a great time again, I think, to like take a step back and evaluate what it is you want to do. So it sort of depends on your your situation at home too. Do you need to get out there and get a job right away? Do you need a gig job today to make ends meet? Do you have somebody else in the family that can help support you while you figure it out? You qualify for unemployment benefits. There's all kinds of things, but once you've kind of figured out how much time you have, I think it's important to figure out what you want to do and then how those skills are transferable. Again, the food and beverage industry is one that usually bounces back pretty quickly. It's one of the ones that doesn't go away as quickly. Food and beverage is it's just a great industry for its resiliency. And somebody like you said, like your friend at Ticketmaster, I would say, look at your skills and see which ones are transferable and which ones you want to transfer. That's the most important thing, I think. That this time is kind of giving us is this the direction? That question you got to ask when you graduated from college, what do you want to be doing in 5 years and 10 years? And you had no idea. Well, if you've been in the workforce for 10 or 15 years, you do have an idea of where you'd like to be in 15 years and what you want to be doing. And it's not too late to start working toward that dream, to figure out what you need. Is it more education? Go online and get it. Figure out where you want to be in 10 years and go after it, step by step.
Yeah, I would add, I think being aware enough about what you're in today to recognize the fact that maybe it's changing or evolving or something is critical. I think resting on old laurels these days is going to be a challenge for all of us. I also think, maybe this is the persistence point, but the metaphor I like to use is like a turtle doesn't move ahead unless it sticks out its neck, right? And so I think you got to stick your neck out a little bit and start to learn from others, from your network, from people what's out there, and understand better the landscape of potential other opportunities. And this is going to be resumes and other things that you got to do and networking, but that will allow you to begin to understand where you're at today and what things can move with you, or what things are adaptable enough to go into different environments, and what those new jobs or new opportunities or new companies may look like. And I think, that don't sit and wait for that to come to you. I think you have to go out and seek that and find that. And I think that's really important. Having personally I was an insights guy for 20 years, right? Market research for 20 years. I've been through that in the last couple of years. It's scary. It took a lot of transitioning for me, and a lot of learning new things for me. But at the same time, this part of my career to back to the learning curve. Oh, look at all the new stuff I'm learning and new people I'm meeting and new companies I'm dealing with. It's pretty cool too, so it's exciting once you get your neck out there and start looking, because you're going to find some awesome stuff. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I certainly hope you weren't implying that we're supposed to know what we want to be when we grow up now. I certainly don't. I look forward to all those new opportunities coming forward, but the one thing that I think helps, if you are that person who has been impacted and it looks like your function or your sector or whatever is going to be challenged for the long term, this is the time to really bring that humility that we were talking about earlier to the forefront. Don't be afraid of part-time. Don't be afraid of a much lower job title. Don't be afraid of contract work. Don't say no to anything, because all three of those things can turn into something better really quickly once you get inside an organization and demonstrate your value. And, I've had similar things happen, in my past, where I had a conversation with somebody that started with you know, your resume is a little too big, too long, too whatever, you know, you're not probably going to be a good fit here too. Wow, you know what? That thing you just mentioned, that's the kind of value we'd like you to bring to the organization. Could you do that as a consultant, a contractor, you know, whatever? And it's turned into something over time.
Terrific. I'm going to ask our attendees, please use the Q&A feature if you have any specific questions for our panel, and then I'll sort of just ask one more while we're waiting for those to come in. So just any parting advice, just words of wisdom for anybody out there. You've already imparted so many, but any last thoughts?
But I mean, I'll jump in, Alan. The three words I would say would be never stop networking. Meet as many new people as you can, help as many new people as you can, and try to do it every day. Bake that into your new operating system moving forward. It can be life-changing if you let it, and it certainly can be career-altering in a good way.
I think keep plugging away. You know, you can only do what you can do, right? And you can only do one thing at a time usually, right? And so, but darn it, do at least one thing every day, right? Like keep plugging away, keep chugging, and don't stop. I think that's the mindset I'd like everybody to have.
That's terrific.
I'd say open the door. You know, be willing to say yes, be willing to take opportunities, like sort of echoing what Charley had said earlier.
Terrific. One question that came through is, you know, some people have had a dream of going to a startup. Any thoughts on, so, wow, is now the time for a startup? Or, wow, should they shelve that dream for a while? Thoughts and I'll say just insights.
Absolutely. I say absolutely, this is a great time for startups. When's the best time for a startup? My answer to that question is, when's the best time to have a baby? There isn't one. A startup is just like having a baby. It's a dream, and you go for it.
Yeah,
timing's not important.
I agree. I mean, I used to do mergers and acquisitions, so I've looked at a lot of startup companies as an agency person. Now and a small agency, we deal with smaller firms all the time. It's never, it's almost like nothing changed for them, honestly. So I think the environment there continues to be really exciting and interesting. I'm aware of people that even in the last few months have moved from more traditional things into startup type roles. And to some degree, those little startup companies have an advantage over the big established ones. You know, they're more agile, they're able to change more, the type of people that are there, you know, and so it's a really interesting thing where I would almost give the upper hand to the startup company over the big established firms these days.
Terrific. Charley, your thoughts?
Well, and thank goodness you didn't say nimble, because somebody would have yelled bingo, you know, startup bingo out there. We've got to work in either agile or nimble, right? Yeah, and absolutely. I think this is exactly the time, if you have the ability, if you're in transition and you have the ability to take a risk, you know, if you don't need immediate income or immediate income at the level you had it before, this is an amazing time to take a risk with a startup. I would think that, to both of your points, I would think the opportunities are really, really strong there.
Terrific. So another question, have you seen companies loosen up their requirements for headquarters-based employees? So context here, just increase in productivity with work from home. Are they starting to look for qualified candidates around the country and maybe not moving them, but allowing them to work from home? Is that happening yet?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so. Remote work is just, it doesn't have the stigma it had a year ago.
Yeah, my experience is the same, and I think we've proven to ourselves that we can do this. And I've even interviewed for roles in the last year, and it's no problem. Stay in Chicago, even though headquarters is in New York or LA or whatever, right? So I don't see that as a barrier at all. anymore.
I'll just put a caveat on there. It does depend on the type of role. If you're in sales, if you're in marketing, if you're in finance, remote is much more of a possibility. Operations, it's still feet on the ground. You're going to have to, which isn't necessarily, a headquarters job, but more of a facility plant job. But in operations, it's feet on the ground.
Got it. So a question coming from LinkedIn. The questioner completely agrees about the importance of leveraging networks, but wonders about how do you balance needing outside worldviews or diversity with bringing in first and second degree connections for roles. So are companies hiring who they know, or are they hiring for diversity? Like how far are they casting the net within networks?
I don't know. It's a hard question. My personal experience for me has been, it's not unusual for somebody I know to introduce me to 2 or 3 people I don't know. And in fact, that's a great question to ask people you know. Who else do you know that you think I should talk to, type of thing, whether you're hiring for a role or learning about the landscape out there. I think that's the kind of thing I've personally had experience doing. I've met a lot of fantastic new people who are now my LinkedIn contacts. So it's kind of neat that way to do that.
Any other thoughts on that?
I would say I'm always looking for referrals when I'm looking for people to fill roles. And a lot of my clients, as an executive recruiter, they're asking for diversity these days. They're asking us to find them more diverse candidates. So I think that's been going on. That's been getting stronger for the last probably 2 or 3 years. So I think that's opening up. If that's kind of a question.
So we just had another question come through on the topic of diversity. Is being an older worker considered part of that diversity, or like how important is or how much of a disadvantage might age be?
I'll take that one as an old lady. I'm actually been placing in some of my senior roles. I've actually placed people that are in their even in their late 60s because people do value that expertise. So where I used to see a lot more ageism, I'm not seeing it as frequently anymore. People are starting to value that expertise. And again, that goes back to the diversity. The people that are looking sometimes for older people to join the company tend to be younger entrepreneurs. And they're looking for that wisdom. And sometimes some of my older, people that are older are looking for younger people. Again, and that age diversity.
I think it's been less ageism and more high salaryism, So if you come forward with a value proposition that makes sense to that particular organization, regardless of its size, the age part of it tends to leave the discussion. One opinion.
I agree, Charlie.
Very interesting insight.
If you are older looking for a new position, I think it's really important to let them know that you're not in it for the money, you're in it for the job. You're in it for it to learn and be of value.
Yeah, that's terrific. And we have exhausted our questions from our audience. I'd like to thank all 3 of you for sharing just really, I'd say, terrific experiences and insight, even some inspirational words today. Really appreciate you just taking the time and connecting. And I have to say, I've never seen our chat more active with more, there's like links in there and there's like such great stuff. And you guys were a terrific inspiration for our audience to post terrific things. I will say, in order to stay connected and continue to build your network, please do check out the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network. We do, a lot of events. I think we still have 2 or 3 more in the month of June. And we do keep the networking going. Lots happening. And again, these kinds of conversations are one of the great ways that we can all stay connected and you can continue to build your network. Thank you all. Have a terrific day. Looks like it might even be sunny out there in Chicago. and we appreciate, again, all of your time and all of your insight. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.